Hey guys, Wayback Rewind here. Today I'm going to look at the JVC GR SXM 730U. I know that's a mouthful, but that means that this is an SVHS-C camcorder. And what that means is it's compact VHS, but in a Super VHS format. And why does this even exist? Today we're going to talk about this camera, and why it's a niche within a niche, and what it was actually trying to accomplish with that. Coming up next, here on Wayback Rewind. Okay, welcome back. Let's get started. So first of all, the model name, it actually has some meaning. SX means it's Super VHS. The M means that it has a monitor or a screen. 730, the 30 represents the fact that it was manufactured between 1999 and 2000. 7 represents its place in the lineup. 7 was relatively high end. There was only one model above this, the 930, which had a color viewfinder. It's the only difference. What was this camera trying to do? Compact VHS had been around for a while. Compact VHS was actually one of the first camcorders that came out. If you remember the famous GRC 1U, the famous Back to the Future camcorder, and the GRC 7U, which famously advertised that it only weighed 2.9 pounds. But here in 1999, what was this camera trying to do? First of all, by 1999, the whole world had gone digital. This camera was competing against Digital 8. Sony's line of Digital 8 camcorders were about the same size, maybe even a little bit smaller. And Sony was also putting out mini DVs, which were even smaller. Ridiculously small, you might say. So with cameras that size out in digital, why was there even an analog standard definition camera at this point in the development of the camcorder? Well, JVC was very dedicated to this format. JVC was the only camera manufacturer that was even making super compact VHS. This format was a little bit of a compromise right from the very beginning. At launch, this tape could only hold 20 minutes in the highest quality. They were able to make it a little bit thinner and squeeze 30 minutes onto here. Mini DV, which is about a quarter of the size in terms of volume, this tape could hold 60 minutes in its highest quality. And of course, Digital 8, which used the same cassette as the standard 8, this could also hold 60 minutes. Digital 8 ran at about twice the speed of the regular 8mm tapes, so the ones marked 120 would actually run 60 minutes if you were doing Digital 8. So just comparing the size of the cassette, this has a very odd thickness because it's the same thickness as a standard VHS tape, but it's in a much smaller size. It only has one hole here, because that one hole goes into the machine, and then the other side is run by a gear. And the thing that people were so excited about in the 80s is you put it into this adapter, close it up, and now this adapter can go into a machine, to a VHS machine, and play just like a regular VHS tape. Now, people found that so compelling that they were willing to deal with all of this clunkiness so that they could have the smallest camera and the largest amount of convenience. The problem with that, in order to compete with Sony's high-band 8mm, JVC came out with a super compact VHS tape, which means that once I put this into the adapter, it will only play in an SVHS VCR. Very few people own those. If you were into video and you were doing editing, maybe as a side business, you were shooting weddings and events, maybe you had a Super VHS VCR, but very few consumers had them. This format was crippled right from the start, that it actually had an SVHS adapter here, but very few machines it could play in. JVC did address that later by coming out with what they called SVHS ET, which would play these tapes, or they would have like quasi playback that would also play these tapes. But by this time, it was too little too late. By the time this machine was being sold in 2000, the whole world had gone digital. Nobody wanted these machines anymore. The only thing they were being sold for was because they were cheap. You know, in 2000, 2001, you were looking for a camcorder. The Digital 8 machine that I showed you, you know, this camera would have been over $1,000. This camera right here, you know, this would have been about $1,500. And we're talking in year $2,000. This camera was selling for about $500. The whole point of this camera is that it was a very cheap way to get a relatively compact camera. But by the time you put this big chunky tape in here, you know, it just was not, it wasn't as slick as the other formats. You hear all that tape loading going on there. The only good thing that I can say is that these batteries are still available, brand new. So if you happen to find one of these that still works, like this one, you can buy brand new batteries for it and it will work just fine. So for this inexpensive price, what kind of features did you get? First of all, you have a 3-inch screen here, color screen. It's not a touch screen. Everything is operated from this wheel, which you have to press it to bring up the menu, and then you rotate it. This is the camera menu. You can set manual white balance, manual exposure, manual focus, which is kind of a nice thing. From the system menu, record mode, SP, you always want to record in the fastest possible speed. Digital zoom up to 400, that's more of a gimmick. Wide, basically this is a simulated letterbox. It's just cropping, but it does kind of future-proof your video. You want to shoot it and then eventually show it on a widescreen TV, so you might as well leave that on. That's VHS. Of course, you want to always record in the highest quality, so you leave that on. Tape length, that just kind of gives you a countdown. Picture. Okay, so this camera does have a digital still camera built into it. By 2000 standards, it's pretty weak. It records in standard definition, 640 by 480, and in the highest quality, if you set it to fine, you can only store 30 pictures on here. There's no removable memory card. It does have 3.5mm jack. You can plug in a serial cable, hook it to your computer. I was able to download some 20-year-old software, and I was able to actually access those digital pictures. There's nothing to write home about. Just to say it's there, this does have a digital still camera built into it. Going back to the camera menu, it does have a titler built in. It has these handful of titles. You can't really change these. You can't change them at all. Whatever you put in there, that's what you got. Put in congratulations, and that's what I got. Congratulations. Year 2000, that's basically all you had. I'll leave the camera menu. There are a handful of other digital features built into this camera. Not a whole lot. You have a fade and a wipe here. It has several different types of wipes. You have this fog feature, twilight, slow speed shutter, sports, sepia, monotone, negative, positive, mosaic, stretch, classic film, strobe, video echo. That video echo is kind of interesting. I'm going to show you what that looks like. Video echo kind of creates this weird kind of a dreamy, sleepy effect. It's kind of cool. It's about the only one of those effects. I normally don't like in-camera effects. That's kind of one that I would use. That's kind of cool. So that's basically it. It will record onto the tape if you're in tape mode, but you hold this button right here, it will go into camera mode, and when you push this button, it's actually taking a picture. I've only got 10 left. I don't want to take too many. This camera, it's got a little bit of a crunching sound there. Not really sure what that's all about. Let's go to playback mode. There's a little rotary knob over here. Go to playback mode. You have to do old school rewind. This mechanism sounds really old. It doesn't sound very smooth at all. By the way, that grinding sound, it was recorded onto the tape. This camera has no external microphone jack. This camera, it's got a little bit of a crunching sound there. Not really sure what that's all about. You're stuck with that crunching sound because there's no external microphone that you can fix it with. So this camera barely works, but it works well enough for me to demonstrate what this tape is all about. And there you have it. Compact Super VHS. An analog format, roughly equivalent to High 8. It was attempting to compete with Mini DV and Digital 8. This was pretty much the end of the line for Compact Super VHS. And so there you have it. The JVC Compact Super VHS for 2000. Trying to compete with digital. That was a battle it was never going to win. They milked a few more years out of it by selling it as a low-end alternative to the digital cameras that were coming out in the early 2000s. But eventually, these just disappeared into the scrap heap of history, along with all the other failed technologies. So as always, please like or subscribe to my channel, and thanks for watching.